lucky. You are all lucky. There is no glitch today. See, Team Biba. Okay, so let me just check the live streams. I'm going live on Instagram now. And checking YouTube, making sure we are live on YouTube. And again, we are live on YouTube, Biba. All right, Biba, Biba. Right. Right. Buenas and hafade todos hamzu buena hudzong. Estigi e. Wait, kumatotso ongan? Kumatotso? Yep, enigi. All right, enigi. O openzu. Buenas and hafade. Todos hamzu buena hudzong estigi nuevo na episode fanatsu. Half a day inanho si Michael Luhan Bavakwa Guahu I host Midzu Tatlu. I am your host once again, Michael Luhan Bavakwa, and Biba Mes Chamoru, Biba Pulan Chamoru. And what better way to commemorate Chamorro month than to talk about Chamorro learning journeys? Hungen, some of you may not know this, but you may feel this. But according to my estimation, 80% of the Chamorro people in the world today cannot speak their native language. Now, if you live in the CNMI, more Chamorros on average can speak their native language. And of course, if you're older, there's a better chance you're fluent in Chamorro. If you're younger, though, there's lesser chance. If you're in Guam, if you're older, you can speak Chamorro. If you're middle-aged, it's half-half. If you're younger, it's a low chance you can speak Chamorro, unless you're in the Harao school or the Fanizak and Sinipok in GDOE. But if you're in the diaspora, the majority of Chamorros, and including Chamorros even in who are older, most of them cannot speak Chamorro. And so when we look at the Chamorro people, not just in Luta, in Tinian, Saipan, Guahan, but Chamorros across the world, we see that the language is declining. The majority of us can't speak the language. And so this is one reason why for Fanatsu, we have this series called Learning Chamorro Journeys. And this is the 9th episode, Sigua episode in this series. Now, what do we mean by learning Chamorro journeys? What this means is, of course, what is your connection to the Chamorro language? Did you grow up speaking Chamorro? Did you take Chamorro in school? Did you hear Chamorro when people were angry at you? Did you hear Chamorro when you went to church? Do you only know the dirty words in Chamorro? Are you a malfunction Chamorro? As in the only Chamorro you know comes from Senator Chris Malfunction Barnett and his skits? Or are you a Guam funny memes Chamorro? That the Chamorro that you know comes courtesy of Frank the Crank or Finadeni Nenny and that type of social media universe. What is your connection to Chamorro? Because as Chamorros become spread out, the diaspora grows and more Chamorros leave the Marianas. The idea that a Chamorro is born into the world and they automatically know Chamorro, that they're born into the world and they automatically have a ranch down in Malesu or up in Tinian or up in Saipan, that's no longer the norm. Or that a Chamorro is born and they have cousins by the dozens and they have like 7 siblings or 10 siblings. These are no longer the norm. And so we need to talk about what is the journey of the Chamorro people in relation to their language, because how do we keep our language strong? Well, we share our stories about how we are always growing in our language and learning our language. And so I'm very thankful that I have with me today, uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis. There's 6 of you who are willing to talk about your journeys in learning the Chamorro language. Or there's 7 of you. Wait, uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis, siete. Oh my goodness, wow, at Nesti. Look at this. It's a Liberation Day carnival already. There's 7 of you. Oh my goodness. And so, este mega tautogi halami Zoom, but this is good though, because why do we want to talk about our Chamorro learning journeys? Because normally sometimes we might think, I can't speak Chamorro. My grandparents spoke Chamorro, but that's not a good attitude. Instead, what we need to think is, I'm learning Chamorro. Adumididi, little by little, I'm learning. And that's a better attitude. And how can we get a positive attitude about that? By hearing that there's other people, young, middle-aged, old, whether they're in the Marianas, whether they're in the diaspora, but they're also learning the language too. And so the more we hear that other people are learning, the other people are trying, the easier it is for individuals, whether they are in Vermont, Florida, Wyoming, Hawaii, or currently in the Middle East and the Persian Gulf, for them to learn Chamorro, for them to start learning. And so, okay, Atan Hamzu, Tiutungo Hadzi Masamko Gwini. I have no idea who is the oldest person here. Normally we would go by the oldest. So Hagu, Senor Buenti T Hagu, I don't know if you're the oldest, but you maybe have the least hair. And so we can go with you first, Hungan. And so Putfabot, let's start off. Each of you introduce yourself, Hadzi Nanmo, Hadzi Familiamo, Manunai Sumaskahao. And then as part of your introduction, just talk about where did you grow up? And then what was Chamorro language something that was around you a lot, or was it something that you didn't hear a lot? And Senor Hago Finetna, put for what?
Wahusi Byron Hoffaday. I was born and raised in San Francisco. My mother is from Ganya Heights, Concepcion, Camacho. Familia Heneca. Uh, she moved to the States probably in 1959 and married an American guy and raised her 3 kids in San Francisco. So I was, I didn't go to Guam until like 1968, I think. When I was about 5 years old, I went to Guam for our first visit. Loved it, of course. Um, so my was the question about my exposure to the language early on? Miget? Was that what the
Hungan.
second question was?
Hungan.
So I remember just my mom moved here with her sister, was here, and her brother was in the Bay Area in San Francisco. The 3 of them, like her brother came out first to the Air Force, and then he sort of sponsored them over, so to speak, because they couldn't. 2 young daughters couldn't come unless they were with, you know, chaperoned by their older brother, of course. And what I remember earliest was just listening to my mom and her sister, who lived 2 blocks away from each other when we were little kids. There were 3 of us, and there were my auntie had 3 kids as well, and us little kids would go play, and I would just remember the 2 of them just jamming in Chamorro, sitting at the kitchen table while my mom was doing the laundry across the street, the laundromat. She would come over to my auntie's house, and they would just be jamming in Chamorro, and I would just be sitting there listening, kind of amazed, but not having any idea what they were talking about. But I just loved how expressive the language was, and how I want to call it like sing-songy. It felt like they were singing almost. It felt like it was musical, and I just really enjoyed it. And then they were my mom and her sister were so expressive, and they weren't so much when they spoke English, but when they were speaking in Chamorro, they were so expressive, and it just really I just loved listening. Yeah.
Oh, Gov bonito now. Si Diyos masinay noon sa ngani hamdo ano na storya. That's such a beautiful story to share. And I think many people might also share, those types of, emotional connections with the language. And that's one reason you want to learn, right? You want to hold on to that and you want to explore what does that mean? Más que palabras esti lenguajita. The language is more than just words. Hungan. And so,
Their
si dus
favorite
mas
word was
sinod and
lanyat. They always said lanyat, and I was like, I just love the way they always said lanyat. I don't even know what it
it,
means, but
it's a beautiful It's a beautiful word. I'm totally joking. Lanya is not a beautiful word.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah,
don't let that be your first. Your
yeah,
For
yeah.
learners of tomorrow, don't let Lanya be your first word. Okay.
I
And
figured it
wait,
was,
Gaigi
yeah.
Gwini Ilahimo. Gaigi Gwini Ilahimo, your son is here in
Hmm.
the Zoom too, right? And
That's
so
right.
put
Yes.
for bot, Manny, put for bot. Go ahead and you can introduce yourself.
Bueno, or Viva. Guahu si Manny. Familia y Hanakalu. Uh, Byron y Tatahu. That's my dad. Um, yeah, I mean, I, growing up, probably knew two words or three words, maybe hafade, finidini. And that was pretty much the extent of my Chamorro. It was like a distant thing that was really only related to like maybe once a year, maybe we go to like a fiesta for Thanksgiving. And other than that, the kind of Chamorro language was like not ever in my life. Um, and so for me, it became only during college really that I like began to understand in an almost like I don't know intellectual way about like the reason why I felt so like disconnected from the language and the island. And I had gone for a family reunion when I was like 16, maybe 14, 15. Um, and it always kind of felt like there was this missing part of like my sense of self, and th that part was very much kept up in my grandmother and her legacy, which, well, I think being very interested academically in these things of colonization and historical memory, maybe is a good word, and kind of realizing that that is a very personal, I have a very personal connection to that because there is this kind of whole side of my family that I don't really understand or that I don't really know. And so finding the classes online was actually kind of like a godsend to like be able to have just a room full of people that are Chamorro and that are speaking Chamorro and having a space where I could like claim Chamorro-ness. Um, yeah, there's more to say, but I'm imaginable.
No, Sidzus Masi. I think I think it's and some of you may also feel it because it's one thing if you're in the Marianas and Mas Mega na Chamorro, but if you're in the States and there may not be as many Chamorros, and so you feel you know f that sense of belonging, that sense of community, and so Sidus Masi Manny, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's a strong motivation to learn your language, right? Is because you're trying to find a connection and find and no, si Diyos masi hu agradeci how and Señora Jacinta Buenti Hago y mas tsago na gesti na kompensasyon gidzaguahan or contra guahon ay gidzaguahan. I think you're the furthest away from me here in Guam. Sa gaigi how no sumaska gidza Florida, no? And so put for what Buenti Hago Pagod and gov bonito ano na coronamo na gilumo si Zeus Masi ano. And so put for bod ko sino introduce in my sahaw. Oh, ti o open house senora.
Malay pa?
Ungan maulik pog.
Si Jacinta Santos Nicholas hu tato asal lumangagi ham sa Florida pago. Si nanaho si defunta Josefina Limchaco Santos. Sa si tataho si defunto Commissioner Joaquin Seguenza Santos. Mafanyagan asanzo sa mapoksay asanzo lokwe. Anay 20 años do udingo tano huguahan sa militar ya sa guaho. Onsiham na manetlo di familia. Zaguaho mina jazz di familia. Man fifino Chamorro gigima lo anedikiki ho zo madisiri na para mafino English ha zo. So I heard Chamorro all around us. Everybody spoke Chamorro then, but my youngest sister and I spoke only in English. So I did not speak, even though I was in Guam, I did not speak the Chamorro language. So my grandmother, in her broken English, was directed to speak English to me because her Chamorro was inferior to the much superior English language. And so my tata spoke even less English. He would say, Zasin, faha, eat. Zasin, coconut, oo hagaw, oo. So you come to our island, you impose your values on us, you define success for us, and you dictate that we cannot speak our own language in our own homeland. That's wrong at every level. And so before my mom passed, we visited her in her Asan home. And she looked all around her and she was observing everyone. And she knew that something was terribly wrong. And it hurt her in her heart. And she said, Tingo man pinot tomorrow put a bot. Tingo man pinot tomorrow.
Si Zeus Masi. Met good ano isinangan mo, Senora Goff met good who senagwerdesi ano isinangan mo. Thank you so much, Senora, for sharing your story and then also your strong words. Hey, wow. Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, I'm shaking when I think of it. I'm shaking, really.
No, Hungan, and I think this is one of those reasons why, this is such an important conversation, because I think for when we think about how quickly the Chamorro language disappeared and the psychology of how it went from everyone speaking Chamorro to then parents and grandparents just not speaking it to their kids and choosing not to, and what that does to a people, how it affects not just choices around language, but all sorts of choices. And so I'm going to go to the center square now, like we're playing Hollywood Squares. Sa Megay, man Megay hit. Senora Belta, Gaigihao, you're in the center square on my Zoom. Pues Hagu Pagu put for bot. Oh wait, Ti open how? I'm gonna unmute put for bot, Senora. Enigiha.
Guahu si Belta Strawn, Sumasagod Zogi, Catonsville, Maryland. Sinanahu, Dolores Paris Ishizaki, Tato Santa Rita, Cook y Familia Cook. I grew up in Guam, and my older siblings, my mom would talk Chamorro fluently. But my youngest siblings, my two sisters and I, basically, we didn't speak Chamorro fluently. Seriously, the most we could talk in Chamorro is like 3 words in a sentence. It would have to be a short sentence. We couldn't do a paragraph, But I did miss it. Like when I came to the States, there was no one to talk Chamorro to. I mean, I attended Guam Liberation or Chamorro events, birthday parties, and there were some people that could speak Chamorro fluently and some didn't. And like last year at Guam Liberation, I actually went up and I was saying Hafaday, and people weren't responding. They would speak in English, hi, and I said okay. So I really do miss hearing people talk Chamorro. And so that's why I decided I have to learn the language. I do. So here I am.
Ay, si Zeus Masi, Senora, si Zeus Masi. And I think that's why these types of conversations are important, because I think megay natawtawta buwenti man mamalaw, no? They're embarrassed, right? So because they may
Yeah.
not be able to completely speak Chamorro, so they're embarrassed to speak a little bit of Chamorro. But we should encourage people, right? That even if you can't, if you only speak a little bit, share what you know and keep learning, right? I mean, it's kind of like saying if you can only make Kelagwan manok, then you shouldn't even bother to bring any food to the fiesta. What we wouldn't say that, would we? I mean, well, I don't know. Maybe some of your families might. We don't want you. But no, if you can only cook one thing, then you should. That doesn't mean you stop cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I think that was an important anecdote. We should. That's why I'm glad you're all part of this conversation, because we want to encourage people. Encourage people. Oh wow! And so, how many more people do we need to introduce? Oh my goodness, Senora Marie. Senor Marie, Halgo Palgo, por favor. Hungan, Enigi. No, no, okay, Enigi, how, Hungan.
Okay, buenos times a todos. Inanhu si Marie, Itatahu si Rafael Lujan Calvo, Familian Polly Scott, Tautau Aganya Heights. Nanahu si Menes Antolon Torres, Titatungu Familian Mommy on my mom's side. I was born and raised in Guahan for most of my childhood, except for the few times that my dad was stationed off island. Pago, Samasaga, California, desde 1973, when I graduated high school and came out for college. Growing up on Guam, it was really great. I heard Chamorro all the time. Chamorro was spoken between my parents. They spoke to each other, my mom and dad. Chamorro was spoken when we were off the base. Oftentimes we lived in Anderson. And whenever I went to families' homes, Chamorro was always being spoken. It was great. However, I was never expected to speak Chamorro. And therefore, I never really learned how to speak it. I've heard, jokes being made of only knowing how to say hafade, sazuas maasi, and all the foods. That was me as a Chamorro. I remember once asking my parents, why aren't you teaching me Chamorro? They never said outrightly, blatantly, don't speak Chamorro. I was never discouraged from it. But then again, I was never encouraged to do it either. And I think to placate me, my dad taught me a poem and a song in Chamorro when I was a very young kid. And other than the food words and the greetings, those two things that he taught me was really the extent of my Chamorro. And I treasure that even to this day as I'm starting my Chamorro, Fino Chamorro journey.
Sidzus Masi, Senora. Sidzus Masi. Oh my goodness. Biba. Govzao Toruestina Historiasia. I'm loving all of the stories that everyone is sharing. And I'm gonna. We are down to the last person to introduce themselves. Michelle, Gof Gai Pacencia, how you have been very patient, and I hope that the pressure has not been building on you to now say the most amazing intro. No, I'm just kidding. Lo, por favor, Cosino introduce en Maisa, how please go ahead and introduce yourself. Imas Hoban, you're one of the younger people in the group. Por favor.
half a day. Thank you everyone who shared so far. I'm really moved by all of your stories. I'm Michelle Ray. I was born and raised in California. I still reside in California. I grew up in Southern California. My mother was born and raised in Southern California as well. And my grandparents came to the States from Guam. So my grandfather came before my grandmother. He was served in the U.S. Navy and was stationed in Florida and then California. My grandmother came with three of my aunties and uncles in the late 40s or early 50s. And we're in Florida for a few years and then settled in Southern California. So, was that me?
Oh, Maulika, you're okay. So I think somebody else's ringer went off. Or go ahead, Siggy, dispense it.
Okay. So from what I know growing up, my mother and her siblings would hear their parents speak Chamorro to each other, but they really discouraged their children from speaking it at all. What I do know from my grandmother, I sadly never got to meet my grandfather. Oh, my toddler's coming in the room. Oh, baby. It's okay. You want to come say hi for a sec? Yeah, you can come say hi for a sec. Yeah. This is my baby Jules, who at least knows the word Fina Denny, because Fina Denny is the name of our little black cat. She's small and black and spicy. Okay, baby. I'm gonna keep talking here, okay? Excuse me for that. Sorry. Trying to manage. So yeah, growing up, I heard often the word Finadeni and sometimes half a day, Kelaguen. But I know that my grandmother, growing up on Guam, she recounted to me that she would be beaten in school if she spoke Chamorro. And I think my mother's generation was also in a generation here in the States where it was thought that if anyone, like children were only capable of learning one language at a time. So it was therefore more important to push out other languages. And growing up, I was really curious about I was very close with my grandmother. I was very curious about what it was like where she grew up. I asked her lots of questions. I remember I asked her, then my family called it Guamanian. They used the word Guamanian instead of Chamorro. Chamorro is a new word for me relatively, just in like the past few years of my life that I'm learning. And I asked her, Nana, how do you say milk in Guamanian? And she said, leche. I was like, whoa, that's just like Spanish. Because I knew a little Spanish because I grew up in Southern California. And I wasn't able to make like those connections or why there was, Spanish words. I was like, is it derived from Spanish? I was really confused. And then more recently, in I think it was 2018, I saw Tommy Orange speak. I live in Oakland now. He's from Oakland. He's not Chamorro. He is native to this continent, I believe Cheyenne or Arapaho, and he's a writer. And he was speaking about his book, There, which is fabulous and really meaningful. And when he was speaking, I remember he talked about growing up in Oakland and walking around and people coming up to him and speaking to him in Spanish as a default, which was my experience growing up. People saw me and they would speak Spanish. And then they would either think that I was stuck up or, oh, so sad that you don't know your heritage Spanish, because I couldn't respond to them. And I shared that with Tommy, and he said, I experienced that too. And what I recognized was people were recognizing a shared indigeneity when they were speaking to me in Spanish. And that really moved me and helped me feel connected and encouraged me to look more into my heritage. And I think living in Oakland has encouraged that too, just seeing the power of Indigenous movements here. And I know they're elsewhere as well, but I'm not on Guam. I did visit with some family back in 2019. I met you, Michael, in person, and my Uncle George says half a day, and he thinks about you often. But I know we have a lot more to talk about, so I think I'll leave it there. But that's been some encouragement to learn Chamorro, and to be connected to my roots that I have always felt connected to in a way through my mother, my grandmother, but has been forcibly estranged by powers greater than us.
Oh, Sidus Mase. No, thank you so much for that. And then Byron here says that he just finished that book too. Bipa. And then este guaja net nun leplu. There's a book club already starting here. And Sidus Masinu Hamsu Todos, and there's quite a few people watching. And so there's people watching from all over. There's people in Luta watching, there's people in Texas watching, there's people in Guam watching. And so you're getting quite a lot of hafadays and support people saying same here, Si Tahini Davis, Sumaska Gwini Gidzaguahan, she says it was neither encouraged nor discouraged to speak Chamorro, and she says that she can definitely relate to that. Just that feeling that, it's just like it happens or it doesn't happen. No, nothing, whether, and so I want to give people a chance, though, for those of you who have tried to learn Chamorro or learn more Chamorro, whether from your family, just informally, just asking people to speak to you. Some of you have shared those experiences, or you've taken classes like online, or you've taken classes formally. But I want, if you don't mind talking about that experience, like what was it like? And if you want to share kind of an anecdote, because I think one of the things that we have to reckon with, and it's a tough thing to reckon with, but more and more Indigenous people or sort of communities that have endangered languages have to reckon with it, is that if the normal place that a language is usually passed on, which is the home, the family, if it's not happening there, then what you need to do instead is that you need to support second language adult learners. So if parents who are speakers are not passing it on to their children, if grandparents are not passing it on to their grandkids, then adults who want to learn, you got to support them. There needs to be classes for them. There needs to be lots of apps, lots of websites. There needs to be lots of resources. And so for those of you who have tried to learn or tried to improve your Chamorro, what was your experience like? Did you feel like people were supportive, or do you feel like people said, hey, basta, the language is dying, that's okay. You should learn Japanese instead. You should learn Tagalog instead, or you should learn Mandarin instead. Or that's the thing that I got when I was learning Chamorro. Everyone was like, hey, you should learn Tagalog instead. You should learn Japanese instead. You should learn this and that. And even my own family told me, learn every other language under the sun, but don't learn Chamorro. And so what was your experience? Were you supported? Were you not supported? Did you find it easy to get resources or help? And so we can I don't know if we want to go in the same order or if we want to mix it up. But Senora Jacinta, I'm gonna give it to you first, or I'm gonna hand it to you first. Hungen. Ti o panhaw dispensa.
What's that, Malik?
Maulak esta. O panhaw.
Okay. Well, in the 90s, actually, I was in Guam in the 90s, and I asked a very fluent Samoan speaker to teach me Chamorro. And you know what the response was? Why should I teach you Chamorro when you can use it only here in the Marianas? You cannot use it outside of the Marianas. And I thought, how shallow. It's for that reason that we should learn and speak it because it's unique. It's because of our uniqueness. And that's the anecdote I have. Plus, there's more.
No, bonito. Senora Baihubota, how? Komalologo, how? Are you running for senator sa Bebota, how? I'm gonna vote for you. Hunggan. If you're Bira Tatinay sa Bebota, how pari legislatura, Hunggan. Zahu ano na hinaso. I really appreciate that because, Senora Jacinta there is hitting on something, and many of you may relate to it, especially if you're from that generation where people said, if you can't get money from it, if you can't get a job, pues basta. Tibali. So why should you speak a language if you can't get a job from it? Forgetting that why does everything have to be about money? And so Senora Isinta Sidus Masi. And so Senora Belta, do you have
See,
anything to add in term Hungan, put for what?
okay. I did ask a cousin if he could teach me Chamorro, and he said that there's no structure. There's no structure in the Chamorro language. I guess back then, people were just saying words. And so I didn't learn. I mean, I tried to find somebody to teach me. So finally, during the class, I called my brother and I asked him, I said, can you speak Chamorro to me in WhatsApp? So he said, well, there are some words I don't know, like pie and cake. And an older guy told him the word for pie and cake. And he asked me, he said, what kind of a Chamorro are you? So he did arrange for me to talk to someone back home that I can practice with.
Sidus Masi, Senora. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's a common thing that some speakers will say. There's no structure, and I guess I feel for people when they say that. It's not, there is a structure, but I think it's just when we ask people for help, we just want them to speak to us, right? They
Right.
don't need to be Dr. Catherine Uggan or Dr. Benedita Camacho Dunca or Dr. Robert Underwood. But por favor, finot sa marudzizu, just speak tomorrow to me. Help me, give me somebody to practice with. But I feel like some of them, because they may not have gone to school to teach tomorrow, they shut it down and they say something that they don't mean to say. They say, oh, there's no structure to our language, or our language doesn't make any sense. Or like one thing that I've heard, and it always hurts me, is they say, oh, Chamorro's not even a real language. Whenever I hear that, I'm like, hey, but we spoke it for 4,000 years. It was real for a very long time. Taimano esti na timagahit esti lenguahita mauusa para, they used it for a lot longer than we've been around. And so thank you, Senor, for sharing that. And Senor Marie, do you have something that you want to add into this in terms of you trying to learn Chamorro before? And Hungen, unmute, por favor.
Hungan, I always felt different, being here in the diaspora and always being proud and identifying myself as a Chamorro. Every opportunity I could share with somebody out in the community that I'm from Guam and share a little bit, whether it was history, our culture, tradition with someone, I was always so proud about that. But the one thing that I was lacking was the ability to speak Chamorro. And on my last visit home in 2017, things seemed very different. The Manamka were already gone. Most of them had already passed on. And there was very little Chamorro that I heard being spoken out in the communities. And unless I was visiting a family where there was someone older or someone that did speak Chamorro, I wasn't hearing very much about it or of it. And so I asked my nephew, Jared, I said, Jared, how come people aren't speaking Chamorro here? And he said that he had just recently taken a Chamorro class. And then he took me down to Paseo de Susana, to the Harao School at that time, which was a very small program. And I was highly impressed that these little children and adults also were fully immersed in this program. And I decided then and there, when I retire, I want to learn how to speak Chamorro. And I thought that would mean having to go back to live in Guam and take classes at UOG. And then I happened on your classes, Senor Miget. And like someone else said, it is a godsend because I'm able to still be here in the diaspora and still take it. So for that, Suzu's Masi, I think many of us are agradasu.
Oh,
So that's
Ongen.
that's my journey. I started taking classes with you a few months ago. It's has to be one of the most challenging things that I have ever done, and I'd like to think it's because of my age. Starting to learn at age 69 is probably a lot different than if I had learned to speak it earlier. But I'm not giving up. As you know, I'm repeating the Pollitos level all over again. And I want to say, though, that me wanting to speak Chamorro, it's like the trickling effect. My Iasaguahu, Sigari, he's not Chamorro. And he all of a sudden 4 weeks ago has decided that he's interested in learning Chamorro. So there we have the ripple effect. He is now taking the Pollitos level class with me, and it's quite fun. It's made learning morph into something different as I try to help him along. We help each other. And I seem to be retaining a lot more by doing that. You know, they say if you can teach a 4-year-old how to do something, then you've mastered it. So, yeah.
Senora Biba, Hungan, and I told the Pozitos class this weekend, I think, the story of a couple that came in, which was similar, a Chamorro wife and then a non-Chamorro husband, your age or maybe a little older, and and the husband, I asked him, oh, do you know any Chamorro? And he said, I know Mungi I remote, and he said Mungi Iroku. And that's the Chamorro that he knew. And I told, and I told the Yasaguanya, I told his wife, I said, Senora, if you had been teaching him Chamorro all of these years, he probably would have learned it. You should start teaching him Chamorro now, because look, he even said Mungi right. Look at that. He must lose the remote all the time. He must lose. One of you is losing the Roku all the time because you say the word Mungi all the time because he pronounced it correct. And so it's an important reminder that share the language. And if you share it consistently, no matter where you are, people will pick it up and people will accept it. Like, I think it goes to what, people, Chamorro sometimes feel like, I think, Senora Jacinta, was it you who said that somebody said, oh, Chamorro doesn't matter because you can only use it here. So what's the value? Tibaliana. And so sometimes people say, oh, that's why our food matters because you can take it and you can cook it anywhere and people will eat it. And it's like, well, your language also has value to share too, because if you connect with others and you're close, you repeat it, then they will pick up Chamorro as part of your relationship to them. Chamorros have always accepted and changed for others. It's part of what we are, but we could also think then that that others will learn our language for us as part of our relationship to them. And so I have so many stories that people have told of non-Chamorros learning Chamorro words and sometimes learning a lot of Chamorro words, because if you keep using it with them, not just the bad words, but other words too. But the bad words are always the easiest. Sidus Masi, Senora Marie, for that. And Senor Byron, let's go to you, and then Manny now talking about, Chamorro classes that you've taken, your experiences. Put for what?
I really have to give credit to my son, Manny. A couple years ago, he started on his language journey, and I got curious about it, and then he introduced me to your course. And I'm working full time, so it's a challenge for me to do a deep dive. But I found that just by tuning in and mostly listening and having, sometimes unfortunately it's in the background as I'm working, but I just decided, because your class is great because it's so supportive, and it's not rigid and like you've got to learn these steps and you've got to perform and then you've got to answer the teacher's question. And if you were asking me questions in the class, I probably would have disappeared a long time ago because I wouldn't want to be called out. But because I just get to come in and listen, it's kept me going and got me even more and more involved, which is, I really appreciate that so much. And so my anecdote, I guess, is just the welcome vibe and all the support that's in the class is amazing. And I would encourage anybody and everybody just to tune in, even if they can't dive in deep enough to do all the exercises. Just expose yourself. If you're driving the car, just listen to it. I just love listening all the time and hearing the language, and I know that will give me the background and the impetus to continue and do a deeper dive when I'm working less, which retirement's coming close, so I can't wait. The other thing is the support that's in the San Francisco Bay Area. I was really surprised at how many folks here are also interested in and actively either taking your class or having meetups. I've been going to a language meetup for about 6 months now with Benny Anderson. Benny? Yeah.
Oh, Hungan,
Yeah,
Biba,
Benny
Benny.
he and Matt Hattori, they are basically the organizers of it, and they work so hard. They just give, out of their love for the language, and the love of meeting up with us. So they've been so supportive, and they make it easy. They make it easy. They make it impossible not to participate because you just want to see them, you want to hang out with them, you want to hang out with your fellow Chamorros that you really don't get to see in the everyday very much. So I've gotten more involved in lots of groups, and I'm just growing in all this in basically the last year. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, Biba. Sidzus Masi. And Manny, to you?
Yeah. Well, the way that I found the classes was super random. I was traveling in New Mexico and I met this woman named Amber who lived on Guam apparently for many years, but she's a white woman. And she told me about these classes that I had never heard of before. It was like free online. And she was the one who was very encouraging me to go and like just try it out. Um, and I mean, like my dad said, I guess the classes were in a way just so low stakes. It's almost like, why not? It's like, and then I remember when I was first starting, I mean, maybe I've been in Pudzitos now for like 4 years. Um, but when I was first starting and I was actually like very excited about it, I'm still like, well, excited about it, but talking to my grandmother in Chamorro, I thought was going to be such I don't know, level of connection with her that I would have never had. And I remember calling her and like trying to like speak Chamorro and like have this like profound moment. And there was very little kind of reaction or like very little kind of, I mean, she was like, "Oh, that's great," but she was very not interested in speaking Chamorro with me. And I think that was a little disheartening. And in a lot of ways, it made sense to me afterwards. I mean, after hearing all of the stories of people who grew up on the island who were discouraged from speaking the language, and having been in the States for so long for her, it almost seemed like a cognitive dissonance that I would be speaking Chamorro to her. And not that I was speaking very much Chamorro to her. I mean, it was very, very elementary. But I think after, I mean, she passed 2 years ago now. And I think after she passed, I think my conviction to learn the language actually became stronger because it felt like maybe that I had been taking it, my relationship with her in general for granted, but also my relationship to Guam and to the language for granted. And that, I don't know, it's a way to connect with her even after, she's passed on.
Jesus Masi. Thank you for sharing that. And I mean, even the realness and the rawness of it. I mean, I think I've heard so many stories like that. And even for me, when I first wanted to learn Chamorro, my grandmother was ecstatic. She was so overjoyed, and my grandfather teased me mercilessly for a year and would not like let it go. And it took him like a whole year until he finally would speak Chamorro to me and support me. But it's one of those, I think it's one of those things you learn all sorts of lessons. And sometimes the lessons are like that our people have trauma, our people have gone through a lot of things, and sometimes we don't completely understand them. That past we may not understand. We thinking the language to our elders may anyway. Michelle Hoggle, anything to share on your end? Then I know, Guy, you have a child on your lap, and so feel free to share. And if you need to run and do childcare, that's okay. But you can share and run. I know the
Thanks.
feeling
I've been
of
running.
podcasting with a child.
Yeah, I know you know. Yeah, that's why the earbuds are in so that I can run, and I've still been paying close attention to what you all have been sharing. Even if you don't see me on camera. Yeah, a lot of what folks are saying really resonates with me. What you're saying, Manny, really resonates with me as well. My grandmother, left Guam in her early 20s, and I know that she had a lot of trauma there, and associates that place and the language with it as well. And the opportunity for me to learn Chamorro from other places didn't come until much later, just a few recent years ago. So I don't know how she'd feel about. I can't say I relate to that part. I don't know how she'd feel about that, but just knowing that that was part of the reason that she and my grandfather pretty much forbade Chamorro and with their children, but they spoke it with each other because that's what they knew best too. My grandmother perpetually lived in this state of feeling like I could see that she just had this low self-esteem that she couldn't express herself fully ever. And my grandfather passed before I was born, so pretty young when he was like 50. So she passed in her 90s. So she had like a lot of life without him and without that one person. And they were also estranged from a lot of their family too. Part of, that traumatic experience. Baby love, you want to stay here? You can stay here.
You want to sit up there?
But, languages hold so much for understanding. That's how we understand each other. And I all my life I've loved learning languages. I took French in middle school and high school because it was available, and I knew I would learn Spanish later, which I did. And learning Spanish, even like that motivation goes back to that story I was talking about, where people would just come up to me and expect me to speak Spanish. So it's like, I've got to learn this because it's expected of me, and these people feel connected with me, and I want to connect with them in that way. So this opportunity to learn Chamorro has been really wonderful, and then also hard too. It's brought up like a lot of self-doubt stuff, and I feel like I should know better because I've learned a couple other languages, and I'm also a professor. Like I am teaching all the time, and then I'm like in your class, Michael. At first, I'm like, oh, I can't do this. Like, oh, what was I thinking? I don't have enough. Like, I don't have enough time to commit to this. Like, to commit to really learning. But then just keep on showing up to class, and some things are starting to stick. And now those Chamorro language children's books that I got for my kid, because why did I get them if I couldn't pronounce what I was reading? But now I can pronounce what I'm reading a little bit more. I'm like, oh, it was just some things I like knew already just from like listening to the way my grandmother pronounced English, like, or also Byron Lanyat. That's another word that was. Let's talk about that word later because I looked it up in the dictionary, and anyway, it seems I can go on and on about language, but so I'll try to wrap this up. But I'm finding it profoundly meaningful to learn it now for myself and for others. And even if I don't reach fluency, just the depths of understanding I'm getting about myself, about my family, about my culture and my people from before and also today is worth it and purposeful.
Biba. And si Zeus Masi Saman Mega hit, there's so many of us, and so we are just about out of time. But I want to give everyone a chance to share a final thought or a final message or a final story. And so I'll leave it up to you what you want to share. And so I think, and people have been commenting and sharing, thank you for sharing your beautiful stories. I think that's a really important part of the Learning Chamorro journey series is that number one, people who don't know Chamorro haven't really tried, for those of you who have shared it brings out like the possibility of these connections that many Chamorros may not know that if I take this leap, if I take this risk, I might develop these connections with my family, with my elders, with my island, with my culture, with my past, all of that. And so, and then, but for for a final sort of thought or story or message, you can share a story, you can share something that you've learned that you want to pass on because all sorts of people are watching. There are people who can already speak Chamorro who are watching to help people. Hooray for all of you for sharing. And so you can share something along those lines. You can share something if you have advice, after learning Chamorro, like what is your advice? Yeah, share some wisdom that you've learned, or just share why you think Chamorro is important after you've kind of taken a chance to learn it, why you think it might be important. And so, does anyone want to go first? Because if you go first, then you don't have to go last.
Sí.
Señora Jacinta, pues Señora Belta.
Sí.
And then, okay, so, and then Señora Marie. Okay, so Señora Jacinta, por favor.
Okay.
Open up, pero open up.
Pungan,
Okay.
open up, Señora.
Okay. When I go out in public here in Florida and, I hear a family in front of me, father and the family speaking Italian, on the right, they're speaking Portuguese, and little kids and the parents, and then left, they're speaking Spanish. And I said, how beautiful it is to speak another language. And I said, I wish I could do that. And then I thought, but I could. I did. It was in here. And they stole it from me. They robbed my inheritance for me under the guise of being successful. What a travesty. So I'm asking you, what is success anyway? What is success? So when I've been yearning to speak Samoan for a very long time, and I've reached a plateau in my journey. And I've kind of resigned myself to speaking at this level of Samoan. But this class is a safe space, senor. It's encouraging, it's positive, it's a very positive environment, and it's propelled me forward. And I can do it. I can become a fluent speaker one day. And I thank you. And I thank your kids, Samahi, Aklihi, Lulai, Makana, and Neni Ladzek for sharing your dad with us. And most of all, I thank Desiree for sharing Miget with us because I know that's a big sacrifice. So when I reach the level of fluency that my mom had, when I speak and I sound just like my mom, then I would deem myself successful.
Kof bonito na senhora si Deus masi. Oi, si Deus masi. Tadungan na bonito. Senhora Belta, Hago Pago,
Ungen?
your final,
Oh.
ultimo na tinangan mo, your final
Yes.
thoughts. What?
Yes. I want to share a story. Many years ago, I worked for this place, and there was a lot of problems occurring in this place. It was a job. So it was so bad that the president of the institution had to get involved to fix the problem. But this problem has been going on for years and years. But this current president decided he wanted to fix it. And the people in this place knew that this was going on. So anyways, I submitted my resignation, but I didn't tell my sister. But I called her on the phone and I started to talk to her in Chamorro. And I was still limited. I was like, Baba Bavarias todo tauto tizahu gini tizahu, and I was repeating the words over and over again 3 times. So I hung up the phone, and one of the head honchos in this place walked in. And this person said, Belta, what language do you speak? I said, Chamoru. So, and I could tell she was upset. She was lost. She was confused. And then she walked right out. And this was like an hour or two after the telephone with the conversation with my family member. And then I thought she must have tried to get someone from the place to translate the recording or do Google Translate, and she couldn't. Nobody could understand the language, and that's why she came to ask me, what language do I speak? And that was my turning point. Like, I have to learn this language because I have to learn Chamorro because, look, I can speak the language here and nobody can understand what I'm saying. I can say anything I want and there's nothing they can do about it. So that was the turning point for me.
Viva. See, anyway, senor, I like that. I like our secret agent language. I don't want Google. I don't want ChatGPT to know tomorrow because I like the idea that, see, there are things that can connect us to the world, but I love things that are ours. And it connects us to ourselves, to our past, to our island, and we can protect those things too. And there's nothing wrong with that. Our people going to what Senora Jacinta and so many of you have shared, our people were convinced that only that which connects you to the states matters. Give up anything else. But what you have reminded us there, Senora Belta, is that if you do that, then you're vulnerable. But if you have something that only belongs to you and your people, then you have something that they can't take advantage of. And so, si Diyos masi ay zaho ano istorya mo secret agent Belta. Punget. And so, Senora Marie, Hago Pago, por favor.
Hungan. I think Jacinta hit it right on the head. When she gets to that point of success, it will be because she sounds like her mom. And I think for me, that's the connection also. I want, I shared that there was very little Chamorro that I was hearing my last time when I went back to Guam. And I want to, because I have mega memories of growing up, and I want to be able to sound just like my Calvo aunties when they're preparing and cooking on the open fire in the outdoor kitchen, whether it was for the lasadzu, unguput, or just cooking for the family to enjoy. And they only spoke Chamorro while they were doing this, giving orders to each other from the oldest to the youngest. I want to remember what it was like and to sound when I speak Chamorro, like my Taurus aunties when they would get together to prepare every December for the Santa Maria and Camelin. That's a Taurus family thing. I'd like to sound and remember and feel what it was like when my father and his brothers would go night fishing, before and after, joking in Chamorro, laughing, not in English, all in Chamorro, and enjoying it. I'd love to be able to get in a lively discussion in Chamorro around campaign time for the governor of Guam. I remember listening to family members doing all of that only in Chamorro, not in English. And as far as advice, I would say it's never too late to learn. That sounds like such a cliche, but I absolutely believe it. And my mom was a teacher, and she would always tell me, whatever you learn, whatever knowledge you have, whatever education you go up to, that's something that no one will ever take away. So this personal journey of learning Chamorro, it's someone that no one will take away from me. And if you're thinking, contemplating on taking the journey, just take the dive. Give yourself grace, be patient with yourself, and by all means, have fun and laugh when you've been saying Samasaga for 3 months and no one understands you because you're not pronouncing it correctly, Samasaga. So have fun with the journey if you do it, and I hope everybody tries it. My friends and family out there that might be listening, that includes all of you too. Try it. If I can, Auntie Dolly can, so can all my nieces and nephews.
Sidus Masi, woo, at the mesticio. Man, Guafiguini, there is fire here in the chat. Woo, all right. Si, Senor Byron, por favor, and to Manny, para hamzunados. I hand it off to the two of you now.
I don't know how to follow that. That was amazing, and that
It's
was
okay.
great.
We're
Yeah.
now to the Finat Mammoths. Now we're to the
I was-
Calamai and the Latidza part of the
So
table.
thank you.
And
Yes.
so
Thank you all for everything you said. It's just so beautiful. I want to encourage folks to the internet's amazing. I mean, there's so many resources out there, so many ways to connect. I was shocked once I dipped my toe in the water, how many connections there are out there, and then they've led to real human connections. In the Bay Area, that is, might be harder if you live in some places that have the actual human connections. But here in the Bay Area, and I'm sure in a lot of other places too, folks are out there and they're eager to meet. And I also want to give a shout out to the younger generation because I think they're just amazing. They're the ones who are taking the lead in all this in so many ways that I'm witnessing. And I really appreciate that work that they're doing because it allows me to access all these resources as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to my son, who's part of that younger generation.
okay, Biba, Manny, por favor.
Yeah, I'll keep it short, but really, I just want to thank you, Dad, for like doing this. And you expressed recently that you felt kind of bad about not introducing me to the culture and the language and feeling that kind of lack of identity, I guess. But it really means a lot that you are taking these classes and it keeps me going taking the classes. And I feel like that's a quite special way to keep or at least grow our relationship too. So thank you.
Biba. Sidus Masi and Michelle Dispensa Hogwi Utimo, you are the last one. And it just worked out that way every single time. Dispensa. All right. Hogwi Utimo.
Oh yeah, really, really heartened by everything everyone has to share. What can I add? Something that comes to mind, Navajo was a language actually used by the US military during World War II as a language that they used to transmit messages that other opposing forces, enemies, couldn't decipher. So I think, that talking about Chamorro now that you can't just Google translate it, AI won't do it. I think that's so interesting and powerful actually right now, just with how much information is out there. And not to say that, so how we use it becomes really key. And Byron's right. There's a lot of online resources to start. Ultimately, we have to connect with one another. And whether that's in person in the Bay Area or over Zoom like this, and that's how Michael's classes are too. We're talking over Zoom and hearing it. It's taking more connection, and it is connecting us more. And even AI is not keeping up with us. So I think that's really inspirational to bring on this work. And, eventually Google Translate will take tomorrow as well, but we'll be at a different phase then. And hopefully we'll be even more interconnected.
Diba? Si Diyos masi no hamzu todos, hugo fagredesi hamzu. This was San bonito magay na esti conversation tapago. I mean, I think this is, Chamorros were, yeah, I think this is, it's important. Go importante na that ta sosota esti na klasen experienciata siya. It's important that we put these feelings out there. Because I think when we talk about how some of us have connected to family members, asked them to speak Chamorro to us, and they shut us down or they tease us, a lot of that comes because whatever they experienced before, no one processed it. No one talked through it. What does it mean? What does it mean to have the language that you're born into, that everyone speaks? You go into a school system where you get punished for speaking it, and that happens for multiple generations. And what is the impact, and how do you undo that impact? How do we reinfuse value into our language? And how do we get people who lived in that system and then made choices with their families? How do we do that again? And part of it, I think, starts with being openly talking about it, and also then talking, about productively and constructively, not just saying, complaining about how, no one taught me Chamorro, but from learners on their journey and saying, this is my experience. What's your experience? That idea, adumididi, we're always learning Chamorro. And no mas importante Panaguajo. No one has the 100% Chamorro. No one's Chamorro telephone has 100% charge on it. Everyone is always growing in the language, learning more. Whether you are in the Marianas, in the diaspora, there's always more that you can learn, more that you can share. And that's an attitude that I'm so glad that you've all been willing to share today, because it'll inspire others to learn, to be vulnerable, to be open. And so, si Diyos masi, oh man, bonito este na semana. It's a fun week. It was a fun podcast. And so, malagod zunay na besangani todos hamzuni umeigad zanu me ekong okesti loquisi Diyos masi esti ifenakpo esti na episode fanatsu. Diyos este ki otro biyahe esta.
Dios, Dios.
Adios.